Brazil is a science fiction directed by Terry Gilliam, released in 1985.
It stars Jonathan Pryce as Sam Lowry, who has quite a boring job in an office in this sort of dystopian future where there's lots of ridiculous bureaucracy with form filling out and things like that, all sort of overseen by a kind of totalitarian government who randomly pick up people to kill, effectively, to interrogate and kill. Yeah. Well, because in the background there's like bombs going off, terrorist attacks by people who don't appreciate their lives being controlled by these bureaucrats. Sam is having a recurring dream where he's like this winged warrior who's trying to save sort of damsel in distress from like weird baby-faced creatures and this big samurai warrior. It's all a bit odd. So yeah, there's a sort of an error with one of these orders that goes out to pick somebody up, and the surname is spelt wrong, and it should be Tuttle, and they pick somebody up who's called Buttle, and he's the wrong person, but then he's sort of interrogated and killed. They're trying to correct this error and sort of sweep it under the carpet a bit. His boss, or his manager, is played by Ian Holm, sends him off with a cheque for the widow of this man that they've picked up in error. And while he's there, he meets this lady's neighbour, who happens to look strikingly similar to this damsel in his dreams. So he then becomes a little bit obsessed with her and tries to find out what he can about her. There's a possibility that maybe she's involved with the terrorists, and he meets an air conditioning engineer or something who actually was the person they were supposed to pick up, who's played by Robert De Niro, who kind of swings around the city on zip wires in and out of people's apartments, fixing their pipes or whatever. I mean, that's the thing, he lives in this tiny little apartment where nothing really works properly. Kind of the aesthetics of the film is like everywhere has these like pipes and ducts going everywhere. It's all a bit odd. It's very Terry Gilliam, as usual. You would expect nothing less from him.
No.
So, yeah, it's kind of difficult to describe. It's kind of it's a dystopian science fiction film crossed with a kind of romance, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of a love story-ish.
Yeah.
With crazy, weird characters in it. Like his mother, who's constantly having plastic surgery to look younger, which is performed by Jim Broadbent. Obviously, Terry Gilliam was part of Monty Python. You've also got Michael Palin in there as one of Sam's...
Jack Lint.
That's it. Then he works in information retrieval, which, sort of midway through the film, Sam is promoted to. But yeah, there's all these weird named government departments that do all sorts of strange things. It's a weird one.
It's a weird one, isn't it? I mean, it's basically like... I mean, can you imagine spending a day in Terry Gilliam's brain? I mean, well, crazy. I'm a huge Terry Gilliam fan, and we've done The Fish King on this channel before, and I've always, like, right back from, obviously you mentioned Monty Python. We weren't around when Monty Python was first on the TV. We came to it later, and probably like you, probably via the films, Holy Grail and Life of Brian. Although the Monty Python's Flying Circus is great, I always preferred the animations. I always loved Terry Gilliam's animations. It was just completely nuts.
Yeah.
And I love that. I mean, he's American, but he came over to Britain and he joined up, with these crazy John Cleese and Michael Palin and Eric Idle, Graham Chapman, Terry Jones, and he kind of. It was odd. It was although he'd worked in America. I think he'd worked for Mad comic in America in New York. He seemed to get the British absurd humour as well. And around that time, obviously, before Monty Python, you had the Goon show, and our comedy and the kind of post-war comedy was very surreal and absurd. And so I think Terry Gilliam seemed to come over and get it, but at the same time, his mind was just completely insane. And I always loved his animations. It was just completely nuts, just really cool. And then he obviously jumped over into film, and he made Jabberwocky, which Criterion put out a while ago. And then he went to Time Bandits, and he did Baron Munchausen, and 12 Monkeys, Fisher King. Some really, really great work in there. And I've not always got his stuff, but I've always enjoyed. I just love entering the world of
Yeah.
Terry Gilliam. They're completely amazing worlds to go to, and I think he's extremely well read. I think he's very visual. I was watching some when he made Jabberwocky. He based a lot of Jabberwocky on like the art of Bosch and people like that. And he really, he clearly understands. He knows a lot about art and film and literature, and so he's got a huge canon of inspiration to get at when he's making his films. And I just love going to that world, and I really enjoy the ride.
I mean, it depends what mood you're in, really, with Terry Gilliam, doesn't it? Because he's so while they feel like Terry Gilliam films, they're all very different.
Yeah, they're all very different. Yeah, I mean, this is earlier for him, and again, so Terry Gilliam's had a huge. And if you're a fan of Terry Gilliam, you'll know it. You don't need us to tell you again. But he's had problems with studios. He's had problems with money.
Yeah.
I think this one famously had lots of problems with. I think Baron Munchausen was the big one. That's the real problematic work that he did. But I think this one. He had problems on. Obviously, then he went into do some studio films, so The Fisher King and 12 Monkeys and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas were more studio-based films, although he didn't have much of a budget on Fear and Loathing. And so he's been everywhere. He's done all kinds of things. But so, kind of going back to Brazil, what we're talking about, obviously, I just love it. I think it's also, for me, it's almost like the closest one to his animations. There's lots of stuff going on in this film that feels like his animations did. There's lots of like close up of faces, big and very animated looking faces. There's a scene near the very end of the film when there's a funeral, and there's the face that kind of comes in close up, and the colours just reminds me of one of his animations. There's just a lot I find of his animations going on this. There's obviously a huge amount of use of like long zooms and his wide angles and his weird shots and things like that in this film. It's just like a visual treat.
Yeah, the set design is amazing. Yeah, it's great to look at. I mean, I only saw it for the first time. I think it was about 3 years ago, and it wasn't that. I think because it's held up as like this classic now. I was like, is that it? I kind of like didn't really get it fully and didn't really do it for me. So I was like, well, at least I've seen it now. So when you said let's do it, I was like, oh, okay. But I enjoyed it far more this time. I think maybe because I didn't have these expectations that I had before.
Right.
And I could just enjoy it without expecting something else. And I enjoyed it far more. And I think I enjoyed the humour, because there's quite a bit of humour in it, and I enjoyed that more. I went with the weirdness rather than going, what the hell is going on? I don't understand. I just went with it, and I enjoyed it far more this time than the first time around.
Oh, that's cool. I'm glad. I'm happy. Because it is. I mean, it is. It's got some, and I think it's just got some wonderful moments in it. I mean, I won't, we don't do spoilers, but there is, for me, I've always loved, and I think a lot of people love the section near the end. I think it was filmed in the Battersea Power Station in one of the chimneys. You'll know it. And it's when Michael Palin's in the scene as well, and it's so weird and it's so great. But I was reading about, it was a documentary on the disc, and they were talking about Michael Palin was talking about his character and how Jack Clint was written. He was written as a really nice person and as a family man as well. Yet he does these really horrible things. Which is, and that, if you then watch that end sequence, it kind of works for that end sequence, and that whole thing in the chimney is such a strange sequence, but it's so good, it's so well done, and it's almost like this film's almost like it's not one coherent story. It almost feels like Monty Python. And I think maybe some of his films do feel a bit like, obviously he came from a sketch show, and so maybe some of his films, Baron Munchausen feels a bit like that as well. It feels like a series of sketches kind of, put together to form a one coherent film. And this one a little bit like that, although this has more of a plot, kind of, in there. But it's just great fun, and he always has great actors. He has great casts in his films. When I was watching the making of Jabberwocky, and Michael Palin again, who was in that, was saying what's great about Terry Gilliam is he's not really an actor's director. He's not very good at directing actors because he's more about the visuals, so he kind of lets the actors just get on with it. And if you have a great actor, that's perfect for them. They can just go out and they can just do their thing. And he's always good at picking like great. I mean, Jonathan Pryce obviously has gone on now. I don't even know what he's famous for. I think he's famous for musicals over this country. He was in Phantom of the Opera, something like that, or Chicago. I don't know, one of them.
What, on stage? Yeah.
On
stage
stage,
version,
I think, the stage version. I think he's quite famous for being in one of Andrew Lloyd Webber's musicals, and then films. Was it something Wicked This Way Comes? Is that a film he did?
I don't know. I mean,
I don't know.
The main things I know him from is that he was the bad guy in Tomorrow Never Dies.
Oh, that's right.
A Bond villain, and more recently he was in Game of Thrones.
I mean, he's great. He's great in this film. He's kind of that. He looks a little bit like Stan Laurel. I found he's got that kind of.
He does have a surprised look on his face.
Surprised look at it, yeah. And also, I was in love with the beginning of this film. And I was thinking about how that seems to be something that happened a lot in 80s films. Is so he lives in his flat and everything goes wrong. He has like all these like contraptions that go wrong, which is very like Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Gremlins did that. You know, people who seem to like invent things and then they never worked.
But I think that's kind of like what the whole society is supposed
to
be like.
Is about. Yeah. I mean, it's a satire. And there's a bit George Orwell.
Yeah, it is a bit, and there's sort of
on.
Comments on like consumerism and capitalism and things like that. I mean, there's a scene where, obviously, like I said, it's set at Christmas. There's like a Santa Claus. I think he's in a shopping centre or something, and it's only in the background, and you only just overhear, and he says, "Oh, what do you want for Christmas?" And this little girl goes, "My own credit card."
Yeah. So it's complete satire on all those.
And obviously, you know, his mother is having, you know, major plastic surgery, and so's all her friends, and you know they're obsessed with looking younger all the time. And
strangely, it's almost prophetical on nowadays. I mean, because you know, one thing, all the workers, they're all watching these little screens, which tiny little TV screens, when they should be working, and that's what, you know, the first time you see Ian Holm. You know, the camera light goes down this corridor of all the workers at their desks, and Ian Holm almost looks a little bit like Adolf Hitler standing there, although he's certainly no Hitler because he doesn't seem to have any control of the place. And they're all watching these screens that seem to be picking up old, because it's quite a lot of the production design, the set design feels a bit 1940s. It's got that feel to it, a little bit Metropolis like, and there's at one point they pick up Casablanca. At one point actually they pick up the Marx Brothers, which I thought was interesting because I find this film quite anarchic, and the Marx Brothers were quite anarchic as well. And I don't know if there's a maybe nod to that. I have no idea. I'm not that clever, but I think that's what I mean. Terry Gilliam he's like an anarchist. I've always thought. I think that's why I like his films. He's an anarchist. He's totally he doesn't care about the system.
No.
He certainly doesn't care about the film system, Hollywood. He does what he wants to do, and he doesn't care what you think about it. And he makes the kind of films he wants to see.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I ultimately I love those kind of. I always liked Alex Cox as well because he was a bit like that. You know, the filmmakers that they do what they want. They break rules. They're kind of like the punks of the film industry. I have this on Blu-ray, and this is just a standard Blu-ray. Well, the Criterion have done this, haven't they?
They have, yeah, only in the States.
In the States, so. I wish I'd like them to put it out. That's the cover they use for the Criterion disc.
Yeah,
because I love that colour. I love that cover. I'm not so keen on this one. But I'm not able to play Region A, so come on Criterion, release it over here, please. So that was Brazil, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below.
Hit the subscribe button up there, and don't forget to tap the bell for notifications. There's some other videos to check out over there. Come and find us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and come back next week for another video.